Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. So namaste everyone, and also a very happy Guru Purnima. So once again I'm rejoined by Viduleka, and we are continuing our Samvada series. And I have no idea which number this is, so let's just give the title, which is COVID, Institutional Lies and Buried Truths. So today's discussion, I just want to give a caveat before we start anything. That when we started this channel, our goal was to disseminate truth without censoring ourselves and not hide behind the veil of political correctness. So what we are trying to do is really express our concerns and frustrations, not with any particular solution to cure the COVID problem, but the way it has been handled or mishandled by the government and by the major institutions, and how certain truths have been kept from the citizen, and disinformation has been spread and voices have been censored. Also a caveat, before we begin anything, that many of these videos of a similar nature of what we are about to do today have been banned by YouTube and other social media gods. And so it would be very disappointing if that happened here as well. But we intend to keep a separate copy and post to other platforms if such is the case, just as a safety backup. So having said that, I just want to open up the discussion with Viduleka, and I think we are all on the same page with regards to the fact that we are not medical practitioners, and it's just that we have done our research as concerned citizens, and so we request our viewers that whatever it is that we say, accept it with a pinch of salt, but then at the end of the day, go and do your own research, because that's very important. And all we are doing today is not giving any advice, but sharing our perspective with the audience. Because one of the important things that Mark Twain said is it's not knowing something that is a problem, but knowing something that isn't true. And so many times we all of us really tend to walk away with certain facts that we consider as inalienable truths, when the fact could be something completely different. And so this attempt is a way to reach out to people to say that, okay, don't be too confident in your conclusions, whether you are on the quote unquote the pro vaccine side or the anti vaccine side, or whatever side you belong to. Just keep an open mind, and that's the way you should approach the situation, and also view this video. So any comments on that before we get started with Lika?
Yes, means the statement from which you started, that government and institutions have kept something from the citizen, and then you said that the citizen should research. So I think that's a cyclic process. Government has been able to keep secrets, and the institutions have been able to keep secrets because they know that even if we don't tell these things to people, they are not going to think about it. So if they start thinking, the government will be bound to provide the information. So that's it. You can continue after that.
Yeah, seek and you will find, and people don't want to seek, and so nobody feels they're obligated to provide. That's the problem. So just we just want to discuss a few basics to get everyone up to speed with regards to this whole vaccine debate, because to understand the pros and the cons and all of these things, it's important to understand the way the operating mechanism of how vaccines work and what exactly constitutes. So just some basic biology that we want to go over. So we'll be discussing the immune system, the way vaccines work, the pros and cons of getting vaccinated, and so on and so forth. So let's just take a vaccine. Like, typically, what are the vaccines that we've seen so far? The first kind of vaccine is the live attenuated vaccine. So it's basically a weakened version of a virus that is put into your system, which cannot really cause any harm to the individual. So the goal of any vaccine is for your body to recognize a foreign threat, and these are the antibodies that get created by our immune system in order to battle a real threat that is to come. So when we put in an attenuated vaccine, it's a very weakened, almost like an important version of a virus which is still alive, but uh, it's a debate whether virus is even living or dead. But let's just use the term functionally for now, that whether it's really a potent form or not. And the attenuated virus is not, and so your body quickly sends out these quote unquote soldiers to beat the enemy, and the attenuated virus is dead, and the immune system recognizes that, what, I saw this before, and the next time I see the same enemy, I will have a better response to this problem. So that's a very, child's way of explaining how vaccines work. So the second type of vaccine is it's an inactivated vaccine. So again, it's the same version of the virus, but it's not like live. Though a virus is not live, maybe, but it's a dead version of a virus that is inserted into your system. So over here, it does not cause any harm to the body, but the body recognizes the structure of the virus. And so the way the antibodies would hook up to the virus is by the structure, the form, the composition of it, the way it is like structured. And so it recognizes it in the same way it works again. Some people say the attenuated virus, the vaccine is a little bit more potent than the inactivated one because there is also a little bit of fight involved in that process. Now, the third kind of vaccine is a viral vector vaccine, which is a modified version of a different virus, where it's modified to replicate what your threat would seem like, and to go and attack that. And the final one, which not many people had heard of until this whole COVID crisis, is the mRNA vaccine. So what the mRNA vaccine does is it does not really insert any viruses into the body, but it creates the encoding. It provides the RNA mechanism for your own cell to replicate certain aspects of the virus. So for example, the most popular mRNA vaccines we see today, let's say Pfizer as an example, would make your own cell created the distinct characteristic spike proteins of the COVID virus, and those spike proteins are released from within your cell because your cell itself becomes the factory for creating these based on the instructions of the mRNA. And so now your body is able to create antibodies to recognize the spike proteins. And so that's just a quick overview of how vaccines work and how the latest mRNA vaccine works as well. So any thoughts on that before we get into the fun controversial stuff?
No, that was the technical academic part. Let's move forward
Okay,
with the
good.
actual part.
Okay, so now the actual part. So um, let's take let's take the con side of a vaccination uh, during a pandemic. So what happens is, let's say prior to the COVID crisis we see today, we've never ever witnessed a spate of new mutants popping up this frequently in any other pandemic prior to our present one. And so far, we'll come to this in greater detail. But what we've seen is usually preventive measures are taken in the form of vaccinations to prevent outbreaks, not to cure an outbreak that is already in process. And that's why what really brought this to my attention is that if you think of a virus, its its goal is to thrive. Its goal is to pass itself on to the next generation and to infect more and more people, because that's how every single species thrives. Any population thrives only by populating in different directions. So first is horizontally through spreading within a population, and second is vertically through spreading across multiple generations. And the goal of a virus, if it is to survive, it would not be to kill you very quickly, because if you're dead, then you can't pass it on to somebody else, or if you're extremely sick, you cannot pass it on to somebody else. So if you take this whole thing of Ebola, people were very scared of it several years ago, and it didn't really turn into any major pandemic as such, because in an evolutionary perspective, it was a failed virus because it very quickly killed people. So it didn't have an ability to spread. So even this common cold that we have, we can say it is one of the greatest successes of evolution, because it gets us sick every year. We have the flu, we have the common cold, the rhinovirus, which is not very different from the COVID, by the way. The rhinovirus structure is like more or less in the same category as the COVID, but because it's so weakened, it doesn't stop us from going to work or traveling or sneezing on somebody else or coughing on somebody else, and then we pass it on to other people. It's not considered a pandemic when you have a common cold. And so the common cold has been extremely potent and extremely victorious evolutionary wise. So now you could expect that if the COVID virus had to be a success story for its own species, it would become less and less harmful over time as time would progress. And yet we find that every single variant of the COVID is more and more injurious than the previous one, which is very interesting. And I'll put a pause there as I start building the story. But this is what brought me to like do more research. I wondered about it from an evolutionary perspective.
Okay, I have actually not thought much about this part. Like, why is it uh, evolving to be more deadly? But yes, I can quote some of the points as medical practitioners have said that the unvaccinated people are the factory for new mutants, things like that. And then there are many conspiracy theories saying that the new mutants are coming to a place right when there's some political disturbance or political dynamics is happening, like the election time in India and then the election in USA as well. So that is surely going to boost up the number of these theories coming up.
Mhm.
And now in this era, like internet is in everyone's hand. Anyone can write an article on any random platform and it becomes viral. And yes, I have seen many conspiracy theories, and then every day on every news channel they are saying something about COVID, all that. Some doctor is saying something else, someone is saying something else. It's very confusing if someone looks at it properly.
Right.
But I think to console themselves, everyone has picked up one particular theory and have stick to it. Like, okay, I believe this thing is true. अभी वो उसी के साथ चल रहा है.
I love that idea because rather than being honest and owning up that what, maybe I just don't know. Maybe I need to do a lot more research for a lot longer time before I can come to a conclusion. They just pick, as you said, pick a theory, pick a goal, pick a hill to die on, and
Hmm.
that's it. And in some ways I see the relationship of this even with certain religions where people are so sure of the reality that is described by the religion, that okay, this is what's expected after death and so on and so forth. And I like the fact that when you're open minded, you're not seen as an authority at times, because
Exactly.
it's like, okay, this guy is not too sure, this guy or girl is almost contradicting himself or herself at times. And and you also spoke about this whole thing about conspiracy theory. And initially, like many years back, I used to be like, okay, something is a conspiracy theory, you should probably stay away from it. And then I realized that no, it's very easy to label something that you don't like as a conspiracy theory to almost make it lose credibility. And so let's say, uh, you know, a conspiracy theory about UFOs, that US is hiding UFOs, and the
Hmm.
government has kind of like done that. Okay, maybe there's a high probability that it's a conspiracy theory, and maybe the likelihood of actual aliens is very low. But I'm the kind of person who never assigns ones and zeros to anything. I'll always give percentages. So I'll say, what, it's like 0.5% possible. There's a possibility. It may not be true, but it's possible. And the possibility of vaccines is not like anywhere close to 1% versus 99% in terms of the pro and con. I would say maybe it's like 30-70 at least. There's at least 20 to 30% reason to be skeptical, at least, if not more.
Yes, I agree.
And so it reaches a certain threshold where these quote unquote conspiracies have to be taken very seriously because they've crossed a certain threshold of probability. That's how I see it. So let's say, one of the reasons I thought about, and I researched also, why these variants of COVID have become more and more deadlier with the passage of time is for the following reason. Consider you have a petri dish in a laboratory, and you are culturing some microorganism.
Hmm.
Now that microorganism is growing in an environment where it's very happy to grow. It's thriving over there. Now suddenly you start turning that environment hostile. So let's say
Hmm.
you keep adding some acid or some base or something that it doesn't like. It doesn't grow very well in. Now that microorganism culture is going to start dying over time as you keep
Right.
adding more and more unfavorable elements into the mix. The ones which survive are the hardier ones, and then they will overpower the ones which haven't survived so far. So the
Hmm.
ones which are dead will be the extinct variant, and the one that survives becomes the dominant variant. And because the environmental stressor that you introduced into the mix was actually more difficult to overcome, the deadlier variant by nature will have to be more harmful in some sense in order for it to survive. It'll have to be more dangerous. It'll have to have more ammunition and more arsenal.
Hmm.
So now that becomes the dominant variant. And so what happens is that, let's say during a mass pandemic, if you take this example of a petri dish and you think of a whole population, every single person who has been infected, let's say you are infected and then you also receive the vaccination while you're infected, what ends up happening is that the COVID, I'm sorry, let's say you're receiving the vaccination just prior to infection. Now what happens is that your body has created a very strong defense system to fight the virus. But at the same time, there will be certain particles in your body which are immune to your
Hmm.
vaccine, because there's no such thing as adaptation. Adaptation does not happen by the individual. Adaptation happens by the population. And
Hmm.
this is like evolution 101, which everybody misses. They think that somehow something that evolves, that same thing will become stronger the next day. But no, it's not that. It's just it's almost like a genetic mutation or some sort of mutation that takes place through random chance, and that mutation ends up becoming hardier and more prone to survive. And so,
Because others don't. I
so
have thought about it. They survive because others don't survive.
exactly, and that's the same way populations also work. So this theory applies to everything, and so in the context of viruses, your antibodies have fought off the weakened versions of the virus, and your antibodies have not been able to fight off the more potent version of the virus. The potent version of the virus becomes the dominant version, and then that spreads to the next person. Because vaccinations don't stop you from being a carrier, you're still going to be a carrier of the virus, though to a lesser degree, but you'll still have the ability to pass it on.
Okay, I find a gap in this theory.
Good.
Because this theory could apply to every other infection, right? For example, take chickenpox. Everyone gets chickenpox vaccines,
Mm-hmm.
and most of the people still get chickenpox after that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not deadly.
Yes.
But we have not seen chickenpox getting evolved to a deadlier chickenpox, right?
Right.
Same applies with flu as well. Like we
Mm-hmm.
don't have vaccines for flus, but they have not evolved to be a deadlier flu till now.
So
The
there's
common.
correct. So there's a reason for this. The flu. Okay. Let's take the flu.
Hmm.
It comes every single year, but it is not a pandemic. So what ends up happening, like if you think about it, it's a seasonal variety. It comes and
Hmm.
it goes, and it comes and it goes, and it doesn't affect the same number of people that COVID does, and it doesn't have that. I forget what it's called, the coefficient of spread. There's some R value associated with, not this,
Our value, yes.
but it's a slightly different value. And I don't think it's like the R best fit value, but it's a different R something. It's a R coefficient of spread or something. I don't know.
No, that is different, and this R is different. It shows that if
Ha
the
ha. So
value
they're
is
like
less
different
than
R's.
1, then the spread is going to decrease.
Correct, correct. And so, COVID is of course highly infectious, so it spreads very quickly. Now the other thing, as far as the argument in the gap, I mean the gap that you were referring to, okay, when you have a small population that is infected,
Hmm.
small, you know how if like you imagine a box of say 1,000 people, like you have 1,000 dots, and there are just a few dots that are infected over there. Now, when you vaccinate them, let's say 95% of them are, safeguarded from a certain
Hmm.
virus or a certain microorganism. Now that spread factor goes down. But when a large number of dots have been infected within that population, then the spread factor will go down, but it will still be enough to spread very quickly. So it will not completely eradicate, because that the value, the threshold, or what do you call it? There's a certain threshold beyond which it will not be very effective. But like, let's say if you have a few people or an isolated population that has been vaccinated, then very quickly you can eradicate the virus because it's an isolated population. But when you have many people, then it becomes much harder to kill, and then you are ensuring that you're spreading the harmful variant, the dangerous one.
Yes, that may be a possibility, and that's a nice dynamics to have thought about.
Mhm. And again, just to like caveat all of this, these are ideas that we have, but it may or may not be completely factual. But I'm saying that these are things to consider, and time will tell. So that's one thing. Now the other thing is, one concern that somebody else raised. There was one guy called Vanden Gerhoeft, I think a Dutch scientist. He mentioned that if you really, he brought up this whole vaccination theory about, like, maybe you need to reconsider about mass vaccination during a pandemic. And now there's another thing also, that let's say prior to this outbreak, we've not used the mRNA vaccine. A lot of people are concerned about the safety issues and such related to mRNA, and I don't know enough for that. Now, some study done by Japan said that okay, they found spike proteins in ovaries of women, and people said that the spike protein is supposed, sorry, the spike protein is only supposed to grow in the shoulder area. It's supposed to like kind of like be produced there, but it's not supposed to be carried over to other organs in the body. It's just in that place, and that's where the antibodies develop, and that's why you get shoulder pain when vaccinated. But there was some evidence. It's not proof, as you very well know, but there's some evidence that there's travel of these spike proteins in different parts of the body as well, and then other people have debunked that study and so on and so forth. So I expect people to, like, bring about counter evidence and evidence and counter evidence, and this thing will go on for some time until we are relatively certain. We can never be absolutely certain, but we'll be relatively sure at some point what's going on. But here's one way I analogize the problem. So far, when a body has to detect a virus, when an antibody has to detect a virus, the virus is more of a general nature. So let's say if I'm able to detect the entire virus itself, the body may be better equipped. And this is just a theory, that I feel that the body may be better equipped to deal with future variants also. But if you're only dealing with one aspect of the virus as opposed to the entire virus, then if that aspect changes, then you can't recognize the threat anymore. So the one aspect of the threat here is a spike protein. And so
Hmm.
the mRNA vaccine only prepares the antibody to detect what a spike protein looks like, because that's what the mRNA gets into your cell, and it
Hmm.
encodes the information to kind of like, it programs the cell to create spike proteins, but not the virus itself, because that would be a bad idea. but it but the it's like, let's give you some COVID. But the now the body detects a spike protein. What if the next variant has a different S protein than the previous one? Now you do a poorer and poorer job of actually being protected. And that's why we see
Right.
today that they talk about the Delta variant, and there's one more variant that came after that, I believe. I don't remember the names perfectly, but they say that these vaccines are like, if they were 95% effective for the first one, now it's like
Exactly.
80%. And then the thing will keep coming down, and that's also speculation at the end of the day. So, is there wisdom in using this mRNA technology, though it's very easy to deliver? Is it a good one? So that's something I also have a concern about.
And that applies not only to the mRNA vaccine, that applies to all the other vaccines, because in Bharat also we see government clarifying every other day that okay, this particular vaccine is also effective for the Delta variant.
Right.
That means that of course there are chances that it may not have been effective, but it is, by chance it is. And the percentages we were talking about, the thing we were talking about, discussions of regarding statistics,
Hmm.
like people are not even testing a considerable amount of getting the statistics from a considerable amount of people. That's one statistics. The results were found with the help of a very very small sample size,
Hmm.
and we don't know what how is it going to work. It's not even 1 year of uh, the vaccines being publicly available, and the doctors are talking about okay, this is going to be effective for at least 1 year. Day before yesterday, some doctor on the television was saying that this vaccine is going to be effective for at least 1 year.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do about 1 year? After 1 year, that vaccinate the whole population again? Where's the budget coming from? What's happening?
And
So
you would want to question, right, Viduleka, that where did that magic number of 1 year come from? It's like, oh, you know what? After 1 year, we're not going to be effective anymore. It's like, how do you
yes,
decide that? Because we've not even rolled out the vaccine for one complete year yet, and already we
exactly.
have these
He's saying that okay, we guess that it is going to be effective for 1 year.
right,
And at the same time, the doctors are not saying that okay, we can say that if you have got COVID, you are going to be that antibodies are going to be effective for at least 1 year. That time period is 3 months, and for vaccine it is 1 year, and
right.
without any proofs, they
No,
are just making speculations,
yes.
guessing.
And the public doesn't care because they're like, okay, it came from an
Because the doctor
authority.
said it.
Yeah, exactly. It came from an authority, and so we'll accept it as the gospel truth.
And the authority himself, I don't think most of the authorities know how the statistical research goes on.
Right. Or
They have been told on a paper that
correct.
say
Or
this.
if they know it, they are misusing it to their own ends. That's also possible. Because many times, it's like there's this thing about how to lie with statistics. It's very easy to lie with statistics. Like for
And
example,
there's one more thing. See, as I was saying right before starting the conversation, that most of the people are not readers; they are followers. If you tell them ambiguous information, then they are going to get confused and abuse all the doctors. So yes, some concrete statements are required, but at the same time, honesty is also required when a discussion regarding the research is going on. When an honest citizen or a thoughtful citizen is trying to find the background research, so none of that is available. So nobody can say that, okay, we are saying this to control the situation. No, you don't know. Say that you don't know things.
that doesn't go down very well, unfortunately, with these people. Because and I think you brought a very good point up, right? That it's good to not confuse people, because at the end of the day, most people, as you pointed out, are followers. And so if you say, okay, you know what, here's one side of the argument, here's another side of the argument, they will just lose their patience and they'll say, you know what, just tell me one answer, give me one answer, should I take it or should I not take it? And then you will try to say that, look, it's more complicated than that. But they're like, no, just give me one answer. Okay, take it. Right? So at some point, the government can't even do anything about it, because they know that if we create too much ambiguity about a problem, so it's a challenge. I agree, and that could be one reason why there has not been much wider public discussion and the citizen education, because it could have created a lot of unnecessary speculation also. So yeah, I can see that being a problem.
See, okay, I'll state it in another way. Like,
Mhm.
yes, maybe discussions were not required. Yes, maybe it was not necessary, or there were some security concerns about publishing some papers publicly, something like that. But I honestly don't feel that doctors and the government,
Mhm.
both of them, I don't feel that even they fully understand that what's going on.
Correct.
If I fully understand something, then I can make policies around it. I can force people to get vaccinated. But if I'm not understanding, then there's a high chance that an error is going to happen.
Yes.
For example, the education institutes now are kind of forcing the students to get vaccinated before they come to the campus, something like that. Even I need to get vaccinated.
And just for complete transparency, you have had COVID at least twice.
Uh,
At
I
least
don't,
once.
I don't know. But once it's confirmed, twice I'm not sure.
Okay. We were thinking potentially three, maybe two, but definitely one. Is that fair?
Yes, yes.
Definitely one. And they still want you to get vaccinated.
Yes, and all these times I didn't take any of the allopathic medicines, nothing like that.
Right.
So it may be once, twice, thrice.
Right. It's
But
a probability. This is the
yes,
proof.
but still I need to get vaccinated.
Correct.
And the most interesting part, when it was definite that I am now COVID positive, when I had lost my sense of smell,
Mhm.
no, I was not positive in any of the tests.
Right.
I was negative.
Yeah. Mm. It's
So
really bad. False negatives are worse than false positives.
exactly. So that was the first negative. I was so sure that COVID government has said that loss of smell is equivalent to RT-PCR positive, and thus I was taking the precaution.
Yeah.
But I still need to get vaccinated
Right.
because, according to one particular doctor, the vaccine may be effective for 1 year, but the COVID may be effective for only 3 months.
Correct. Which is confusing and sad. Uh, now, the other thing about let's talk about the immunity, right? There is reason to believe that a person who may not need the vaccine, but because some people don't have adverse reactions to COVID. You have like the spectrum of people who have mild reactions, moderate and extremely severe or critical. Some people just have a common flu symptom. Like I don't think for you it was extremely pathetic. You were kind of down. You weren't able to function a lot, but you can't say it was like life threatening or severe. And in some sense, you could have done without the vaccine also, right? You would have survived and you'd be okay with just quarantine.
Yeah.
To give a person vaccines, say, prior to getting the COVID, and then getting a new infection through a variant can actually, hypothetically, again, no proof, but it's an argument worth considering. It can create more harm than good. Okay, here's how I see it. Your natural immune system is able to fend off things pretty well. There's a certain viral load beyond which it cannot handle. But let's say a few particles of the virus, yeah, your body can handle it. Most people, unless you're like 99 years old, most people are okay handling it. If the viral load is really sufficiently high, then your body gets overwhelmed, your defense system gets overwhelmed. But now think about it, that your body has learned to recognize a certain S protein. So the way I analogize this is, think of the Indian army. The Indian army has learned to recognize an attack from Pakistan. And so they station all of their troops on the Kargil border. And now, they're just waiting for the next attack. And the attack comes from Bangladesh. Now, your army that was actually spread all over the country is concentrated in one place. And now the cost of travel from one place to the other is going to be much greater than it would have been had they not like aligned in one place. So let's say if the variant is sufficiently different from the original strand, then your body may also have a more difficult time fighting it than it would have having not been vaccinated in the first place. That's a possibility because now your immune system is actually prepared to fight a different form of threat. So I don't know if there's a great bit of science behind this, but this is something that's worth researching. At least it's a question that one should clarify through a professional. Like, what are the possibilities that if there's a sufficiently different variation, how will the body handle that, and will that have an adverse effect on vaccinated people compared to unvaccinated?
Uh, okay. I think, according to me, your conclusion is correct, but the analogy is slight error.
Sure.
For example, there are various types of coronaviruses.
Mhm.
COVID is one of them, and a new one.
Right.
Our bodies are capable to fight most of the coronaviruses if they are infectious to humans. And now a sufficiently different coronavirus that is COVID appears, and the body can't fight it, not because its resources are stationed in a particular way to fight other viruses, but because it is not able to recognize it.
Right.
So according to me, there's not a stationing problem. The problem is about recognition.
But so okay, so let's take the example like two steps back again.
Hmm.
So we concluded initially that if you have a small viral load of COVID,
Hmm.
your body can fight it. That means ki it's not that it can't recognize it at all, but
Hmm.
it's not. It takes some time for it to recognize, but afterwards it does see it as a threat. Otherwise, it would not be able to fight off a small load also. So there's a threshold load. When that load gets overwhelming, then the body cannot fight it. So that means ki it's not, there is a problem of recognition. It's a matter
Hmm.
of early recognition versus late recognition. But the antibodies are still able to recognize to some degree that there is some alien foreign particle in my body which I need
Hmm.
to neutralize as soon as possible.
Hmm.
It may not do a good job because it's kind of like it's not trained for it. It's not trained for the job. If you give a person sufficient amount of time to fight somebody, they'll be able to do it. But if you teach them martial arts, they'll be able to do it better because they have that training. So it's kind of like target specific. So the vaccinated antibody, the antibodies that are generated after vaccine, will
Hmm.
be better trained to identify. But it is
Hmm.
not that the natural immune system cannot identify at all. It just does a poorer job of identification. If it did not identify at all, then there would not be a threshold.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, if suddenly a very sufficiently different virus comes, your
Hmm.
entire innate immune system has been programmed to identify one version of the virus.
Hmm.
And so there is actually evidence that let's say you, when you are also weakened, when your immune system is weakened, after taking the virus also, after taking the vaccination, it's also weakened temporarily because you're tired. Your body has produced so many antibodies that it doesn't have any resources left.
Yes.
But now imagine that something very different comes along. Will the body be able to deal with that well?
Of course, that's okay. I have an example. Means
Hmm.
I have seen a person who has probably suffered exactly because of this.
Hmm.
The person, he was the uncle of one of the friends.
Hmm.
He got vaccinated, and right after that, he got COVID.
Hmm.
And of course, his immune systems must be working hard because of the vaccine. And then he got COVID.
Hmm.
And okay, this can be, there was a slight error in how he was managing it because he kept fast after that for a few days,
Hmm.
and the symptoms worsened and he died.
Hmm.
So yes, that's highly threatening situation when the person is getting vaccine and after that he is getting COVID.
Right.
And moreover, what that did initially, like initially I mean February, March, the duration of February, March in Bharat. What happened at that time is people were getting vaccines and then people were getting COVID. And the weak people, the people who had comorbidities, the people who had weaker immune systems,
Hmm.
they were dying. And everyone was saying that no, if you get vaccines are not working. If you, even if you get the vaccines, you're going to get COVID and you're going to die. So nobody can expect general people to understand this whole big mechanism
Right.
that okay, your immune systems are weakened because of the vaccine, and then you are getting the COVID, it's working more and more, and then your comorbidities, your weakened immune system, everything works, and your body can't function well. You can't say that. But at the same time, during this whole discussion, I was thinking that you see, most of the deaths in COVID are not being caused by the virus or the viral load or
So,
because of the inflammation of the body.
right.
It's happening because of something that's the result of the infection, like pneumonia, all those things. I means maybe there are logics. I personally don't understand that because what if my body recognizes viruses well? What if it fights against it well? But at the same time, some of my body functions are not working properly,
Hmm.
and the virus is still triggering that particular mechanism in my body, like the pneumonia or something like that. Because the last time, like the time when it was confirmed that I have got COVID, at that time even I used to feel slightly like coughing at times and things like that, something like that. And so, and that was the case even when I don't think my lifestyle is very bad. I don't think that I have a weak immune system. I don't think that okay, I don't have any comorbidities. Still, it was happening. And at the same time, we have seen people who got COVID. They were having some like the after effects of COVID, and after 1 month or 1.5 months, they died because of something that happened in their lungs. They died because of blood clotting in their heart. The usage of what do you call it? The steroids, the usage of steroids. But at the same time, people saw that prolonged usage of steroids or giving steroids at a wrong time is again leading to heart attacks. I think one of the famous journalists also died because of that.
Hmm.
So all this is happening like these half-baked research, and nobody is trying to understand what's going on. And at the same time, the media is like this special section on each news channel about COVID every day, twice or thrice. I don't know. I don't watch news channels. So it's creating panic among people. And then the doctors are saying that no, you don't need to panic. Panic creates more inflammation in the body, things like that. So why are you creating the panic? And the panic, I I have seen that the panic is causing more deaths because people are unnecessarily rushing to hospitals instead of getting rest. People are unnecessarily stocking those oxygen cylinders, things like that.
Hmm.
So it's a bad situation, and besides the vaccines being good or bad, it can surely be said that at the level of government, not only Indian government, the, the administrations of all the countries in the world, they have not understood anything.
Yes.
They are trusting the doctors and the researchers. The doctors and researchers are not saying the complete truth because most probably they don't know the complete truth.
Or they're not
And
allowed to
they
see it
think,
also.
what?
They're also not allowed to see it.
Maybe, maybe not. And at the end, the whole, uh, like the 80% of the panic is being created because of the businesses.
Yeah.
Because someone wants you to get their vaccines administered. You have no other research other than the research done by those businesses. The doctors are bound to refer to that, and the government is bound to listen to the doctors, and the citizens are bound to listen to the government because they don't have the data. So it's a bad cycle in which the whole world is stuck right
It's a wicked problem. So I shouldn't laugh at it because it is a bad problem, but nonetheless. See, you raised so many points here. I think each of them are worth discussing in detail. So one thing about this whole comorbidity, um, I had one theory, which I think is a good theory, whether true or not, it makes sense. When a lot of people die of the cytokine release syndrome.
now.
So it's basically your own body's defense mechanism that goes into overdrive and that kills you.
Yes,
I believe this is part and parcel of evolution, where the body knows that you are so sick that let's kill this individual off before he kills more people off. I'm quite confident that the body would not have a response of that, large magnitude, unless there were like some evolutionary forces behind it. Because after COVID has been infected, your lungs have been sort of compromised. As you said, it doesn't kill you. Like, it'll weaken you, but it will not kill you. But in other things, including other comorbidities and your own defense system, is what's going to kill you at the end of the day. So it's kind of like the body just pulls the plug on you that, you know what, let's drop this person here and here. That's it. Before they go and get other people sick. So the other thing you talked about is, doctors. One of the big concerns we are seeing, at least in the United States and growing number in India as well, is that doctors are losing their autonomy because doctors are now subservient to higher institutions which tell them exactly how they should treat patients with certain very fixed and stubborn protocols. Let's put it that way. So let's say if a doctor wants to administer Gharelu Ilaj, some kind of like outside of the box solution for you, then they are actually penalized for that in the US. They're not allowed to use their own autonomy. And I believe like a doctor first and foremost has to be a researcher. A doctor has to be somebody who's not taking orders from higher institutions, but who's analyzing a problem in depth. Let's say, a doctor would come to your place, you're sick for some reason. They will see your vatavaran, they will see your home environment, they will see the water that you drink, they will see the environment and everything within which you reside, and they will take in all of these environmental factors and then even figure out something that the studies have not been able to, based on the doctor's own intuition. Because a doctor has a lot of medical repertoire, they have that understanding of medicine, but then they also have a brain which they're supposed to use in order to come to their own conclusions, which may or may not be those predefined conclusions of the government and institutions. But now what's happening is that doctors have begun to lose their autonomy, and even if they're trying to give a not just a different treatment but even a different dosage of a certain medicine, then they are getting penalized for that. So, a lot of the doctors are, of course, not everybody is like a pure golden heart. Some of them may be into this whole thing about, okay, let's just make money and let's get our job done. But some people who actually want to call out that there is a problem and they want to sound that bell, their plugs are being pulled, their medical licenses are being revoked. A lot of problems are happening in the US. Now, if the goal truly of our healthcare system was to cure the pandemic, I don't agree that that is not their goal, but there are also other competing motives that are preventing them from functioning in the objective and optimal way. They're not able to maximize the solution. And what are some of those factors? First of all, as you pointed out, the vaccines, the sales of the vaccines. Let's get the big pharma institutions hand in glove with the government to ensure that only our vaccines are sold. That means that if there is another, assume a silver bullet, a competing solution that is able to cure the vaccination rate, it's not going to work. Because what they're going to do is they'll try their utmost best at the institutional level to snub off that other solution. They will try to highlight the counter research against it. They will, cut off funding for, providing certain media bites about it, so on and so forth. Now, take this example of ivermectin. So India, Bharat has purchased remdesivir in high amounts, but there were certain states like Goa and I believe Uttar Pradesh where ivermectin uh, was Yogi Adityanath ji did tell people that ivermectin is a possible solution, and one may consider taking that to prevent COVID as well as to treat it. Now, even one of my uncles who took and of course this is a single anecdotal, so you can't use it as a evidence, but he also took ivermectin and he was okay. And in fact, we've also ordered quite a few, like through somebody who's traveling to the US. So my point being that if the goal is to eradicate COVID, why not try every single solution? But the government has done everything that they could, not the government, the institutions and big pharma, to stop people from consuming ivermectin by saying that we don't have enough research around it. Arey bhai, what research did you have before rolling out the vaccines? Usually vaccines take 7 to 10 years of development phase in research and development, and that's why they are expensive. That's why pharmacists charge so much money, because it takes so long to develop a product. But this one developed in 1 year, and suddenly they can also test the efficacy that this will last for a year. And we don't know the after effects of the vaccine. We don't know the long term studies. But there are two types of studies, and this might be very relevant to the research you are doing. You have clinical studies and you have population studies. What these complete, and I don't use the word likely, but morons have done is they have turned all study into clinical study. They don't care for population studies at all. So, like for example, again, there was evidence that certain elderly care facilities in France were administered ivermectin, and that was more of a preventive than other cohorts that they compared against, like other facilities, that people didn't fall sick that drastically. Or when ivermectin was administered in Goa by the minister, again, like people did relatively better there. Whereas in Tamil Nadu, because of this idiot Stalin, or is it Lenin? I forgot. Stalin. he kind of banned ivermectin, and so then we saw coronavirus outbreak over there. So one would want to ask the question that is there a correlation between banning ivermectin and COVID cases rising, or is there an inverse correlation between using ivermectin in a population and COVID cases falling? And now when you're creating a correlation, you cannot create a proof because then you can't establish causation. But at the same time, at least it will make you think that if there is a correlation, let's do more study on ivermectin and let's at least prescribe it as a potential solution. Because then it makes me feel that the goal isn't really to cure COVID, is to sell your vaccines. Because vaccines are the only thing that's prescribed. Now, what about other preventive measures? We have had this discussion on Facebook as well. Ayurveda. Facebook took down my post when I simply said that let's research into both the preventive and the treatment aspects of Ayurveda for COVID, because a lot of people were talking about prevention, that you can build a healthy and strong immune system through Ayurvedic remedies. But I'm like, we've discussed this before, that there is potential for Ayurveda to also be used as a cure, not just as a prophylactic. And Facebook took that post down because it's like you are going against the community standards. For what? For asking questions.
Yeah,
So
so when you mentioned that the doctors are required to should ideally look at the whole surrounding of the house and the environment in which a person is living. I was exactly thinking about Ayurveda, and I was thinking that right when means if I mention this here, then the chances of getting this video taken down increases much more still. So
what?
that's exactly Ayurveda's doing, right? Because talking in the simplest terms, it gives personalized medicines to everyone. The medicine that is given to you is not the medicine given to me, even if we are showing the same symptoms, right? At the same time, the people randomly talking on every social media platform about, okay, eat this and this will boost your immunity and thus you can prevent corona. Okay, yes, it can boost up your immunity, but that is not Ayurveda. That is a general healthy habit. And another thing I was thinking about is, like when you are talking about multiple solutions, most of the people in Bharat know that DRDO uh, found out this new medicine called 2DG. 2DG is just, can I have, I had noted it down. 2-dioxy D-glucose.
Okay.
So have you heard about it?
I've heard about it, but I don't know much about it.
Okay, so it has an interesting mechanism. What this 2D glucose does is it fakes itself as glucose. The virus thinks that okay, this is glucose. Let's take it. And it's not glucose. So for virus, it is poison. It dies. But for our body can function with that kind of heat. It's not taking it as glucose, but it's not harming us. So that was a very simple solution. And DRDO thought about it. And at that time, I was thinking that why could all these big pharma companies and the famous Wuhan lab and the famous labs of Pfizer think about it? So most probably they didn't think about it because they didn't want to think about it. As you said, they want their vaccines to get administered. About the posts getting taken down from social media about Ayurveda, it's a clear example that how the big businesses don't want us to talk about possible solutions.
Yeah.
Because what can be the other reason? Either people are mass reporting. If they are mass reporting, then who are these people who are mass reporting? Or it's the algorithm of Facebook. If yes, then why has Facebook built such an algorithm that it is taking down posts related to Ayurvedic cures for COVID? So I don't think that to prove a certain point, people need 10 positives. Even if one or two positives, you can see that, okay, like this is confirmatory, right? If posts are getting taken down from Facebook, there's something going on. The administration of Facebook wants to be taken down. That's why it is being taken. Has anyone ever thought about the reason behind that? Has the government thought about the reason behind that? If yes, then I don't know what actions have they taken. If no, then why not? And why are citizens not thinking deeply about it? And why are we still being almost forced to take the vaccines? So
Mhm.
at this point of time, if someone says that no, this one is a conspiracy theory and this one is a proof and this one is scientific evidence and clinical evidence, things like that, I don't believe them anymore, because what you are referring to, that research paper, that document, that whatever is still uh, that's still shady kind of thing. You
Yes.
can't you can't trust it.
We should have a new standard that if you want to call something a conspiracy theory, show the evidence that it's a conspiracy theory. Otherwise, allow the voices to float. Because
Yes,
and I want to actually have a separate segment and a whole discussion just on freedom of speech and social media. I think that itself is a full topic. But just for now, what I would like to say on this particular thing that you mentioned is, give people the freedom to negate you. And if you are wrong, there will be other people who will negate you as well. But allow people that freedom, because otherwise, what happens is you become a vocal dictator. And the control of speech is, I would say, one of the greatest forms of mind control. Because the day you begin controlling what people say, not only are you controlling that person's speech, but you're also depriving people from what they can hear. And so you are doing a disservice to the speaker and the listeners. And that is also my message to YouTube, that if you are listening, you can take this video down, we'll post it somewhere else. But we can get as controversial as we need to be. Now the other thing is, when we speak about even ivermectin, posts get deleted. You speak about Ayurveda, your post gets deleted. You speak about vaccines being dubious as to why they are being rolled out to the masses, your posts get deleted. And one of the reasons, there could be several reasons for it, as you alluded to. One of them simply could be that this is what the reigning gods of Facebook actually believe in, because they are ultra, hyper progressive and this and that's the new narrative, and so they are all supporting that indiscreetly. Second is because they blame everything on the algorithm, it takes away accountability. They say, "Kare, we are not doing anything. It's just the algorithm. We don't have time to manage people's posts." But some idiot programmed and fed data into the algorithm. Some people set the hyperparameters of the algorithm to recognize certain keywords. If these keywords are recognized, then other keywords will also be recognized. So then it should have been an equal distribution. But here it is skewed in one direction. That means we don't believe you. Behind every program, there's a programmer. So all these things, we'll definitely get into. But my point is that even when you talk about Facebook, people think it's offering a free service. It's not. You are the product. And ultimately, the marketing advertisement companies,
yeah,
including the big pharma which advertise on Facebook, there's a vested interest involved over there. So these things I want to talk about, and just maybe we'll close this in like 5 7 minutes. But what I want to say is, the government's job is not to enforce vaccine. It is to educate people that, okay, here is a vaccine that can cure this, not cure this, but prevent this thing by X percentage. We encourage you to take it, but we cannot force you to take it. We cannot force you to put something in your body that you are not sure of. It's, you know, I don't see feminists talking about this for some reason. My body, my life, that kind of thing. My body, my choice. It's like, where's the choice here?
yeah,
This is a something that's not been tested yet completely. I mean, they say clinical studies, okay, we don't. Clinical studies relies on two things: sample size and one more thing, time. We haven't had the sample size all the time, and in both cases, they call this proof.
yes,
So, just to close off, we are not suggesting, I'm sure none of us are suggesting here that don't take vaccinations. We're not also suggesting that do go out and get vaccinated. All we are saying is that we expect that the people who are listening to our channel are a bit more informed than the average individual, at least. And in that case, you have the duty, the responsibility to make an informed choice, and don't make it because there's peer pressure involved. Don't make it because somebody is mandated it, or don't make it because it's just the thing to do. Because many times when you have certain groups, who oppose the vaccination, it's very easy to label them as crazy people or anti-vaxxers and such. And many of them are. But
Yeah.
you just have to go by your own understanding, go by your own instinct, go with your own research, and don't give in to pressure on any front. So there's a lot to discuss on these things, but I'd say, yeah, let's close for now. And this was a very interesting conversation. Next time, maybe we could discuss freedom of speech.
Sure.
Vidulika, since I started, you can close off.
No, you do it.
Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnaat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Namaste everyone.